In the narrow corridor that leads to the old preparation room, there is a blackboard hanging crookedly since before I was born, with just one sentence written in white chalk, already eaten by time. If the bell rings, do not open. No one knows who wrote it. My father used to say it was the original owner of the house back in the 1940s, when mechanical doorbells were still connected to coffins by thin cords, copper braces, brass locks, a whole system of policies against the impossibly rare. Era paranoia, he used to say to me when I was an adult, and yet he kept the board. It's a prayer for the hands, he justified. We need reminders to stop us when the body wants to go before the head. That night, the board didn't stop anyone. It was midnight and 11. The morgue stretched as always. Long corridor, wooden doors that learned to creak in the same places, alternating smells in layers. Cleaning product, tired flowers, hinge dust, the cold air of the chambers cutting through the warmth of the rooms. The wake of the day had ended earlier than expected, for a reason too indecent to be spoken in public: the tiredness of the living. The family had already gone home to sleep poorly. The friends had migrated to kitchens and messages. And we, the caretakers of what's left, still in the building, closing the night, checking locks, turning off what needed to be turned off, turning on what resists. That's when the bell rang. Not a bell imagined by legends, not sounds of metal working in the carpentry of an old building. A short, deep ring that came from inside the oldest room of the house, the annex that used to be a chapel before the current chapel existed. There, still installed by the whim of a collection, is a bronze bell attached to a wooden rod. It's not connected to anything. It's just decoration. That's what I tell visitors who ask. And yet, that night, the sound came from it. No rope, no wind, no stage. I was holding the keys, ready for the final turn. In the next room, my younger assistant, Jonah, was gathering flower arrangement supports, cardboard, tape, the invisible remnants that make the day possible and the early morning bearable. "Did you hear that?" he asked, his voice in a medium register without theatricality. "I did," I answered. I could have said, "It was the wood," or "It was the pipe." I chose not to teach my own ear to lie. The board on the wall, 2 steps to our right, informed us of the rule. If the bell rings, do not open. My father would say, "It's so you don't make a mistake." The problem with rules is that they ask questions. Why not open? What not to open? The door, the room, the lid, the night itself. The horizon closed into a funnel. Jonah looked at me as if expecting not courage but discernment. I breathed through my nose, counting 4 beats, as I had learned to do when the decision needs to be made free of haste. The door of the old room, half dark with frosted glass in the center, looked like a closed eye on a larger face. "Let it go," I could have said. "Tomorrow morning." And perhaps no story would exist. Instead, a second ring, shorter, as if the metal had learned to call by the nickname of its own sound. The phrase on the board seemed to grow on the walls. If the bell rings, do not open. I did something my father taught me, not to break the rule, but to discern when it exists to stop fear and when it exists to save judgment. I slowly approached, pressed my palm against the wood, my ear against the glass, and waited for a third ring. It didn't come. Instead, a muffled noise of fabric meeting wood, like the fold of heavy fabric on an old floor. "Should I open?" Jonah whispered. "Should I open?" My head echoed back to me, with my father's face and the backs of all the dead I have cared for. I said the only honest sentence that came to me: if it's just curiosity, no. If it's care, yes. But care knows how to wait. We waited. The building, with the indifference of old constructions that have weathered storms better than ours, returned to us the sound of the kitchen clock, the relay click of the air that insists a car passing far away, and the light vibration of the street. The bell fell silent. The cloth did not. In the end, we opened, not out of bravado, out of protocol disguised as courage. A rule is better followed when obeyed entirely. Our rule says that if there is noise that seems to come from inside, first call out the name of the risk. Is someone left behind? Then check the light, then the lock, then the register. The rule that protects us says, only open if you can assume what will happen with those beside you. I looked at Jonah. Together, I said. He nodded, his hand firm on the bundle of keys, the other arm free, his whole body saying, I'm not hiding behind you. That's how the night hires us, by the honesty of the body. If the bell rings, do not open. But we opened. The lock is one of those Victorian ones that were kept out of stubbornness, and out of stubbornness became a personality. The key doesn't turn beautifully. It resists at first, it threatens in the middle. It yields with humiliation at the end. The bolt inside runs like an abandoned train track, lightly scratching, with a lower note at the end of the course. I've known this sound since before I learned to read. We opened the door slowly. With the liturgy, we learned not to hurt anything, not even the air. The old room remains the same since I inherited this house. Long wooden floors, a tall window with wavy glass, the kind that distorts the world outside like a dream. A side table we use as an altar when the main chapel is occupied. 2 benches that always creak in the same spots, and hanging from the central beam, the bell. I've taken it apart twice in my life for cleaning and curiosity. It has no wire, it has no rope, it has no trick. It has rust at the edges, but the bronze still shines where stubborn fingers pass, by history, the palm, searching for surface. The fabric noise and what we heard in the corridors stopped. The bell which had brought us here fell silent so completely that a proud silence filled the space. In the corner, something measured my gaze. The coffin we had prepared for the morning service, already positioned for the family, closed, polished lenses, handles aligned, side arrangements in water glasses. I don't like leaving coffins ready the night before, but the next day would be a marathon of 2 ceremonies and a transfer, and we have learned over time to prepare the way when the body asks. Jonah walked over to the window, raised the curtain 2 fingers, thick curtain, the kind of tired velvet that holds dust like a secret, and checked the street. Nothing, he said. I moved toward the side table, out of habit, checking if anything had slipped, if the linen was still aligned, if the electric candle had lost its shame and blinked out of order. Everything in place. The bell above hung with the decency of objects that know their own weight. I raised my eyes, asked permission that no one needs and no one answers, took a step closer. Nothing moved. There are noises the building produces when no one is around. Wood contracting, air changing course, glass reminding itself it's suspended, even the arrangements as soaked with water and gravity, rehearsing disarray. However, this fabric noise was new. It wasn't coming from above. It was coming from below. The floor, near the coffin. I went there. The wood there always casts a thicker shadow. The planks are old, the varnish uneven. It was Jonah who noticed. Near the wheel of the stand, marked by the weight, a light streak, like a recent drag, a few millimeters beyond where he had left the set. Did you move it? He asked. No, I replied, in the tone I use when I need him to trust what I say, even if what I say doesn't comfort me. The living-like explanations. The old rooms sometimes force us to call what is merely observation an explanation. We observed something heavy dragged a few millimeters. Could it be the weight redistributing itself on the stand? It could. Could it be unevenness, street vibrations, chance? It could. Could it be our minds searching for patterns in the dust? It could. We also observed the bell rang twice. That's not the part the mind likes to arrange. I pressed my palm against the wood of the coffin. Cold. Not the cold of the chamber, the cold of something at peace. I pointed to the hinges, checked the locks the family never sees, but which give me the spine I need to sleep. Locks in place. Nothing on this side. Jonah approached, crouched next to the stand, and ran his finger through the fine dust that kissed the wheel. It moved forward, he concluded, tracing with the tip of his finger the clear trail on the varnish. I didn't correct him. Confirming, when you're not sure, is just putting fear in a new jacket. Let's come back tomorrow morning, I suggested. If we were meant to hear it, we heard it. If we were meant to see it, we saw it. The board in the corridor repeated its catechism. If the bell rings, do not open. We were officially disobeying. Disobedience isn't always vanity. Sometimes it's reading the rule with a vaccinated heart. I took 3 steps back, my breath disciplined like a metronome. Jonah stayed 1 second longer, his neck at the perfect height for the fingers of curiosity. I called him and he came. Before the door closed, the bell rang for the 3rd time. A dry, quick sound, with no echo, more like the punctuation of a note than the paragraph of a sentence. "Done," Jonah said, as if finishing a task. I nodded without smiling. In our profession, done is a big word. Sometimes the one who knows how to write it is the house, not us. We left the old room, and the corridor returned us to its usual grammar. The colder air, the clock that never learns the time, the emergency light laughing quietly at everything. I did what I do when the night gives me something I can't file away for later. I recorded it. I wrote 0.11, 2 bell rings in the old room, 0.14, minimal drag on the stand, 0.17, 3rd ring. Next to it, I wrote the word that saves me from myself: observe. "You think that?" Jonah began. "I think tomorrow morning I'll get up earlier." I cut him off gently, avoiding him lending me a fear we don't have the budget to sustain. "I think the stand is tired. I think this room holds an echo. I think the board taught us to be less stupid." He gave a small laugh that didn't match the early morning. "And I think my head will sleep without trying to draw maps in dust," I finished, lying only at the end. On the way to the kitchen, the building, with its inherited sense of humor, gave us another noise. The relay click on the ceiling, the air conditioning entering a cycle. Rational. Thank you. I appreciate noises that have a known owner. They return to me the charity of sleeping like an adult. I turned off the light in the old room last. The door by itself chose haste. It closed faster than I intended, with that thump of vacuum that doesn't forgive hands in a hurry. The door frame accepted it. I turned the key with the affection of someone closing a crib. The board to the right in the corridor's twilight now seemed less a prayer and more a provocation. "If the bell rings, do not open." "All right," I said to it, as if it were a poor distance between me and my father. "All right." In the office, putting the keys away, Jonah asked the intern question I respect. "Why does this board exist?" I told him plainly the story of coffin bells, not as legend but as a catalogue. Centuries ago, the fear of being buried alive, mechanisms that connected wire to bells to ensure, and the afterlife industry selling promises in packages. I said that here, in this house, this system was never used. I said the bell was bought at an antiques fair as a piece. I said my father used to say that the phrase wasn't for coffins, it was for us. Don't open the room when the room is putting on a show. He didn't call it haunting, he called it a show. When the night wants an audience, close it. The next day you turn on the lights and the world works for you. Maybe that's why I didn't sleep. At 02:03, still lying on the office sofa, I saw the light in the corridor change. That delicate change the eye catches before the bulb delivers, a sigh in the color of the environment. I heard a wheel noise, the most illustrious echo of any building with a rolling table. I got up. Jonah was already at the door, his hair disheveled, his eyes asking for moral confirmation. "Did you hear it?" I heard. We followed the corridor, running less than the urgency called for. The board repeated the Marcelina phrase of the house. The cold pulled a coat that didn't exist. We didn't open. We pressed our ear against the door. The wheel kept turning, 1 meter, 2, stopping, going back halfway, the behavior of something heavy without a hand. The metal scraped lightly on the varnish. The bell didn't ring. I knew the decision was now hanging over us with the patience of things just. If we opened, we'd lose the show. If we didn't open, we'd sleep at 12 with the ghost of imagination. "Tomorrow," I said, putting the key back on the hook. "Tomorrow." Jonah nodded with his neck and with his soul. We turned back. It took me a while to sleep. When I did, I dreamed of dust drawing straight lines on the floor. No feet, no hands, just trails. I woke up before the alarm, my body thinking it was on guard. I arrived 2 hours early. My hand didn't miss the key. The door opened with the same polite iron. and the room gave me what I had known, deep down, all night. The coffin stand, with a broken wheel, had moved, pulled by the need to find a place to support the weight. The clean streak in the varnish traced a perfect map of the route. The gridded mark of the broken wheel told the whole story without needing an adjective. The bell, it didn't ring. Not in the morning, nor ever since. If the bell rings, do not open. The rule didn't protect us from ghosts. It protected us from being certain before turning on all the lights. The twist wasn't a shock, it was a sum. The broken wheel, better seen in the morning light, showed a mythical diagonal crack to any technician, material fatigue. The weight of the coffin prepared the night before had distributed itself unfairly on that wheel, which gave in millimeter by millimeter until it stopped in a place where it would be less unfair. Each step of the night, an adjustment for insufficiency. Each trail in the dust, a record of survival of objects. And the bell? Could the bell have swung with the displacement? Not in the room's vacuum. Could it have responded to the air the door made when opening with a difference in pressure? It could. Could it have been our memory fed by the fame of loose parts? It could too, and still something in the way the second ring came forces me to respect the golden rule my father left written in the footer of his notebook. If there's no proof, turn on the light and work. If there is proof, turn on the light and work the same way. We changed the wheel in the morning. We adjusted all of them. We repositioned the stand, checked the rails, leveled with minimal wedges. I hung a small invisible tag for the family, visible for our discipline. Check wheels every Monday night. And at the window, with the damp cloth, I dusted the glass no one would see, except me. The bell, spotless from the last stubborn cleaning, received only a flat hand on the bronze, a silent thank you for having rung when it needed to, not to create stories but to stop a mistake. And then the twist gave us its legal gift. The family that was coming at 9, the one with the pre-prepared coffin, arrived at 8:30, crossing the room with the urgency of someone who doesn't know where to put their hands when the world has ended. The man who would rest there was Michael, 62, a church organist. The wife came with the stiff dignity of someone who learned early to carry everything without asking. The son carried a wooden case with a single drumstick inside, a rope drumstick his father used to play only when the big bell needed cloth. I, who don't believe in useful coincidence more than I believe in rain that doesn't wet, saw the drumstick and understood the civilized way the night organizes its warnings. The bell rang, the wheel broke. We didn't open for spectacle, we opened for care. The morning brought someone who tuned bronze. Suddenly, everything spoke the same language. "Can we?" the wife began, not knowing how to define the gesture she wanted. "You may," I answered, giving space, adjusting light, changing air, buying silence. The son raised the drumstick, and with it, gently touched the edge of the coffin. Not the bell, the coffin, to say we are here. I've heard 1,000 metaphors for we are here. This was the one the morning chose. The board in the corridor waited for me to pass it before it manifested. If the bell rings, do not open. I touched the wood with the knot of my finger. "All right," I said to it, to my father, and to all the dead who taught me how to open and close. We only open for care. The climax didn't come in the middle of the night. It came with the hands of those who have a ritual of duty. The son, with the drumstick, opened the case and gently struck the bronze bell the church had lent for the ceremony. A small, portable bell, the kind that announces the entrance and exit of an intimate mass. The sound, controlled warm, crossed the old room with the sonic hygiene bronze confers. I felt in my body what words take time to reach. The touch that woke us the night before had been the inaugural lesson of the day. We took care of the family with method and delicacy. Air valves in the right tone, sidelight that respects eyes, distance between benches that grants privacy. And in the corner, the old house bell hanging from the beam remained silent, as suits objects that know their role in the scene. What revealed itself needs now to be kept. The son played 3 times. In silence. The wife approached the coffin, pressed 2 fingers against the varnish and said softly, "We open." I knew that this was for me, not for the world. an authorization to be there in the right way. We opened, but we opened with reason. We opened the day for the family, not the night for fear. In the middle of the ceremony, a breeze crossed the room. It didn't mess anyone's hair, but it made 2 ribbons of the arrangements dance, a small thing, but enough to remind me of the wheel, the clear trail in the dust, the board in the corridor. The previous night wasn't a trap. It was a discipline applied to the millimeter. And if for a moment it lent us the sound of a bell without a rope, it was to prevent us from moving the room out of vanity. Because if we had opened it there in the darkness to see, the stand could have moved more. It could have disarranged a balance that by millimeters sustained the dignity of the whole. Sometimes fear saves us from ourselves. The son finished playing. He sat down. He held the case. And without intending to give me poetry, he did. He used to say that the hand that touches the bell must be light, like someone asking permission to wake up a house. I wanted to say, thank you. I only said, yes. At the end, when I invited the family for the final minute, I went to the window that faces the street. The wavy glass returned the city like a wet memory. Behind me, Jonah breathed like someone who understood. I won't sleep tonight, he said jokingly. Tonight you'll sleep better, I corrected, because today things have owners. And that in our work is the best thing we can receive. At the end of the day, the building returned us to its routine, lights turning off in the right order, the chapel exhaling the balanced scent of flowers and fabric, the keys aligned on the hook. I passed by the board in the corridor like one passes by a family portrait that has reservations. I didn't take it down. I didn't rewrite it. I didn't laugh. I just touched it. If the bell rings, do not open. The message that has already been superstition, already been a prank by staff, already been a prayer, is now a manual for sanity. Don't open what only wants an audience. Open only what asks for care. Jonah beside me took half a second longer looking at the board. Do you think? I think we learned the right way, I answered. We didn't open when we were supposed to be scared. We opened when we were supposed to fix. The rest is a poorly told story. We closed. Before leaving, I went to the old room. The bell silent, the cold bronze at my touch, reflected my face slowly. The newsstand, with the wheel replaced, seemed satisfied in the way simplified things do. In the corner, the dust returned to its uniformity, lines undone by the discreet broom, the cleaning that barely shows but prevents the building from lying. Outside, the temperature dropped by 1 degree. The houses slept with the modesty of those who don't intend to play a part in the night. In the car, I held the wheel for a full breath and wrote the final note in the notebook I've carried for years, the one that doesn't go to audits or courts, my notebook of honest rules. If the bell rings, 1, listen. 2, do not open for spectacle. 3, open in the morning for repair. 4, thank it anyway. Next to it, in parentheses, remind Jonah to check wheels on Mondays. If you've made it this far, you may have been expecting an apparition. I don't have that. I have a rule and a decision. Sometimes the miracle is not opening. Other times the miracle is opening on the right day. Between those 2 things, there are people, sleep, names, and wood that lives by being well treated. The bell, this machine of summons, rang to teach us not to be the audience. And the next day, the family let us touch back, with the light hand of someone asking permission. Now tell me, if you were in my place in the middle of the night in front of the board and the bell with an assistant waiting for judgment, would you open? When would you open? With whom and why? If you've made it this far, comment the keyword bell and answer. What guides you in an old room, a curiosity or care?